In this first lesson, we're going to be covering the 9 heads format, and that's what we use in order to create a symmetrical figure of the female form so that we can use for future design. So first, when you're starting any fashion design class, you need to make sure that you have the appropriate materials. So I'm just going to kind of give you guys a run through of the necessary materials in order to kind of lightly start your fashion illustrations. Okay, so firstly, you're definitely going to need, so you can go with just regular, either 8 by 11 or 11 by 14 white paper. And it's nothing too fancy, just normal, perhaps copy paper just to kind of get you started. Next, you'll want to get yourself some tracing paper. This you can get from any run-of-the-mill art store, but it's just your standard tracing paper. The one I'm going to be using for my examples is the 9 by 12. So some of the measurements you'll see are going to be based on that paper size. Okay, some of the other things you need, I like to use these mechanical pencils. They're not that great to refill, but they're very precise and you don't have to always worry about sharpening the pencil. So the mechanical pencil is definitely a must as opposed to the regular pencil. I use a thin Sharpie marker to this, if you see, ultra fine felt tip point, and it's just great for tracing over your illustrations when you're done to give them that bold look. You can also use just a regular ballpoint pencil. I'm sorry, excuse me, a ballpoint pen. There's a good and bad of both. This sometimes bleeds and it runs a little bit, so you have to be very careful when you're tracing with this. And this sometimes has the propensity to skip. So although it's much easier to sort of trace with, sometimes it skips, which requires you to like redo the lines a little bit, so you can kind of play with the two. I'll also use color pencils, just your standard color pencils. Color pencils come in such wide varieties. As you go on in your fashion illustrations, you'll become more comfortable with the kinds of pencils you use, but I always use just the standard high quality Crayola because the colors are very vibrant and true. You'll also need a quality eraser. I use this pink pearl eraser, the ones we used in school. It erases clean and neatly. You can also use a white eraser. You can have your standard paper scissors, which are perfect for just if you want to cut some extra edges off so that they perhaps fit in your portfolio. This is also paper scissors and ones that are specifically for paper are going to be very important when you begin actually doing some of the other fashion design related things, and you need to make sure these are separate from your fabric scissors. And when we get to that module, I'll cover why that's so important that the two are completely separate. Okay, you'll also just need a standard transparent ruler. You'll have a grid ruler in further lessons, so you can either use this one, or when we get to our pattern making or draping, you'll be using just a grid ruler, but you can use this for your fashion illustration, just a standard ruler. Lastly, I have just a standard portfolio that you can use to keep all your designs in. I have mine here. It's just a standard, quite large portfolio book, some clear pages, and I just keep some of the previous designs that I've done over the years in this book, some of my favorites that I just like to keep here, maybe as templates, maybe just as references, some of the ones that I've colored, not colored, some of the ones that I just did sort of like a quick sketch for a particular project. So this is just to keep your sketches in one nice, clean, neat place. So you can also use a binder, but this is the portfolio that I use. So that pretty much covers what is required for you to have a soft start to your fashion illustration. Okay, so we're going to start off our lesson using tracing paper. The type that I have right here is the 9 by 12 tracing paper that I'm going to be used for my fashion figure. And this is going to be kind of like also an introduction to measurements and understanding measurements, as we'll be using for future lessons. So I'm going to start my initial measurement. I'm going to go about 5/8 from the top of my paper. Again, I'm using 9 by 12, so your measurement should be about the same, but also keep in mind that I'm using a larger size paper. So you're going to go about 5/8 down from the top of the ruler to about this line right here. And then what we're going to be doing is from that line, you're going to be making a slight marking. From that line, you're going to go down an additional, I would say about 1.5 inches. And make another line, and you're going to do the same thing on both sides. And these are going to be the lines that you're going to use to create your spaces for the 9 heads figure drawing. So I'm gonna draw right across that line very lightly because you're supposed to be very faint and light lines. And you're gonna continue the process until you reach the end. Okay, so I've added this white paper underneath just so you guys can sort of see more vividly the lines that I made, since I do have this grid mat underneath it. So the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna fold the paper in half, and that's going to give me my vertical line of symmetry. So once you have that line there, you're gonna lightly take your ruler and just sort of lightly trace down that center line. So now you have your lines of symmetry where the fashion figure is going to be. As you can see here, I sort of lightly traced the fashion figure that way that we had the outline of symmetry before we actually got started, okay? So the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go and start at the top. So just forgive me, I'm gonna slant the paper a little bit because that's just the way I illustrate things. And now we're gonna begin actually drawing in the features of the form. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna start at the very top. I'm sorry, forgive me. We're gonna actually just label each space. That way we know why they call it the 9 heads format. Again, I'm using the 9 by 12 paper. So the dimensions fit perfectly for this particular assignment. It gives you the full 9 heads layout. So this circle, this frame is gonna be the first one. We're gonna put 2 for this space here. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So this is the 9 heads format just laid out for you, and it gives you a better understanding of why they call it the 9 heads format, because we have the 9 spaces that it takes to create this very exaggerated fashion form. And what's helpful in creating these lines, especially the both horizontal and vertical lines, is again, it gives you symmetry of your fashion figure. So now we're gonna go on and we're actually going to fill it in. So we're gonna start off with the head. And I usually like to do like an oval shape here for the head. And that is where, that's gonna fit in the first block, in the first space. In the second space, we're gonna be drawing in the neck, the shoulders, the top of the bust, and the top of the upper arm. So that's gonna go right in here. Okay. And this is just a basic sort of stance she's having, nothing too dramatic. I'm gonna go back and give her some jawline here as well. Okay. So the next thing we're gonna do is in space 3, now we're gonna add, again, this is an exaggerated form, so everything is gonna be much longer than it would be on a normal or realistic human body. So the next thing we're gonna do is now we're gonna add in that waist, some more of the arm, and start focusing out on the lower part of the arm, but not quite the bottom of the arm, just more lower area of the arm. And this is all going in space or block 3. And then we're going to be giving her the beginning of her hips. Again, this is an elongated form, so it just feels like the proportions are just taking a lot longer to get to the bottom. So this is what we have so far in space 3. In space 4, we are still continuing down to her arm, almost getting to the end of her arms. And now we're just hitting like the wrist in space 4 and the tops of her hands. So this is happening in space 4. Here she's allowed to have her shoulder coming up just a little bit. So you're getting more of the hand on this side, okay? We're starting her hips, continuing in block 4. And now we're going and adding the gape in her legs for her stance. And so far, this is what is happening in block 4. So far we've got the head, the neck, the shoulders, the upper part of the arms, the bust. In block 3, we have her waist, and we're moving towards her hips, her arms, And now in block 5, we're going to be moving more towards her legs. So her legs are going to kind of go on a little long here. So this is her thigh. And we're going to finish that hand in this block. These very long, exaggerated hands. For my forms, I don't complete the hands. As you do your fashion illustrations, you'll develop your own way of drawing. Over time, I've just, as a part of my signature, seeing some of my previous designs, I don't necessarily draw in all the features, including the hair. I just kind of like to end off with like a swoop of the eye, maybe some very full lips. I don't often draw in everything, just as a matter of that's just the style that I choose to draw. You may decide to do something that's more detailed. So it also helps as you're looking at it, you can see the proportions are a little bit off. So these lines also help you go back and determine what needs to be fixed so that she can have a more even look. So here you can see that this arm is hanging a little bit lower than this one is. So I'm going to go back and fix that. So let's just continue. So now we're going to go into block 6 and 7. It's just leg. So we've hit the knee in the middle of block 5 and 6. And now we're just going to go back down to her lower leg. And then we're going to, between block 7 and 8, we're going to start off with her lower ankle portions. And block 8 and 9 is where we're going to take care of her feet. I also like to do a very flat foot, and that's just, like I said, just the way that I've over the years sort of formatted my fashion illustration. So now I need to go here and sort of erase and proportion out that other arm so it's not sitting the way it's sitting. And using this, I'm going to say, okay, that looks like these things should be even here. And that looks like that should be coming close to here. So these wrists should be meeting more here. And then that creates just a little bit more proportion to her look. Okay, so within your notes, you're going to be able to see that I created, or there is a template to show you, give you a better example of the 9 heads format and the proportionality of each figure and how it should look. So you can use that as a guide in addition to this video to help you map out what the 9 heads drawing is about and how it helps you in creating a proportionate illustration of your design that's going to help you create templates so that you can use on future designs, so that instead of taking the time, which takes a little bit of time and some practice to create a fully proportionate sketch, you can sort of say, okay, I'm going to make these templates and I'm going to be able to quickly sketch out a body outline so that I can go right on to sketching and not spending so much time on actually getting these proportions, because like I said, it does take quite a while and quite a bit of practice to get to a point where you're truly comfortable with sketching it from memory without using the templates before you work. Sort of like creating like muscle memory when you're using the templates. So now we're going to go on to the faces. So when we're drawing the faces here, you'll see attached to your notes, I created a PDF and it gives you just a step-by-step walkthrough of how to create a face. And below you'll see just some different ethnicities that you can use for your fashion model. Again, I've developed over time that I don't particularly enjoy writing in all the details of the face, and that's not really the key focus of my illustrations. I'm more about the actual garment, but it's totally up to you if you want to add that personality to your illustration by creating the detailed faces. So now we're going to go through how to create a face. So I'm going to use just plain white paper, and I'm going to start by creating, and this is, again, I'm just going to use this white paper to sort of create a bigger face, that way you're able to see all the detail involved. So what we're going to first do is you're going to just kind of have your finger go like, have your hands just move in this rotating motion of an oval. And that's something you learn in art school as a way to create an oval shape for the face. By doing this motion, you lightly create this oval instead of trying to very sternly and hardly create a face shape, which often is more difficult when you're trying to do it more intentionally. So you just kind of let your hands do a little bit of this, and eventually you'll get the shape that you want. So what we're going to do is, again, we're always talking about symmetry. So you're going to create that first line going right down the middle. Okay. And using the ruler, you're going to create that first line of symmetry, and this is going to help you with some of the features. The next line you're going to create is going to help you with other features of the face. And that line you're going to create horizontally, not directly in the middle of the face, because again, this is going to be the eyes and the eyebrows. So you want to move it a little bit further up, because this is where you'll be creating also the nose and the mouth. So you want to put it about right there, just above it, and very lightly, because these lines are meant to at some point either be erased or just fade off as you trace over your sketch. Just below that, you're going to create an additional line and a shorter line that's going to cover your nose. So you're going to move it down. That's actually a little too far up. So you're going to move it down about right there. Okay. Because this is a bigger piece of paper than you would use on your actual croquis illustration, I won't give you exact measurements because it wouldn't be realistic, because this is just enlarged in order for you to get the technical instructions on how to create it. So you're going to have to eyeball it. You're going to have to eyeball and say, okay, how far should a nose come down? How far should I create a line for a mouth? Now the line for the mouth is going to be a little further down. And again, this is a croquis, this is an illustration. So we're not talking about normal measurements. We're not looking for exact human measurements. So I like to put my line like right down here, and it should be longer than the nose. So that nose line should be a little bit shorter. And right now you can already start to see a shape for the face. The next thing we're going to do is you're going to create this almond. I like to add slashes. This is something I learned to do in art school. I didn't include that in a PDF, but you should add slashes because they help you create the shape of the eye. So you're going to put slashes right in the middle. Those slashes are going to be a guide to help you create the almond shape that you're going to want for the eyes. And again, a lot of this comes with just practice when you're creating the eye shape. So as you can already see, we're getting the shape of the eye, and the slash helps you get symmetry as far as how far down that almond shape should be. So right there, you already have the eyes. The next step is we're going to add in the nose features. So you'll go here, and what I like to do is just very faintly do this sort of swiveled line for the nose. So not anything too crazy, just a very faint swiveled line for the nose. Next, you're going to go down and you're going to create the lips. I like to have a wider mouth, so my lips are often fairly exaggerated. You may not want to, during your time, do such exaggerated lips, but I like to have these very exaggerated full lips, and I just sort of add like a little bit of a pucker to them. And then inside the eyes, you're gonna sort of take your pencil, and I like to create these very full eyelashes. And using the slash that I created in the eyes can also be used to trace over to create the inside of the eye. So right now, just a basic shape of the face. Taking your pencil and going down a little bit darker. Now we're going to give her face a little bit more balance. So we're going to create a chin shape, and I like to go with this angular shape for the jaw. With a bit of a point. And that way she has a bit of a shape for the jaw. You can add creases within the eyelids. And then for the eyebrows, you can start with an initial line here. And just kind of make sure it has symmetry. And then take your first line, so like an elongated L shape, and then just create a very simple eyebrow. So that first L shape, and then just take it to an arch. And that's how you will have your eyebrows. And using the illustrations, you can see the different ways hair can be created. So you can sort of do a loose curl, you can have a more straight bob cut, or fuller hair. When you're doing hair, it's really about most similarly what you did with the drawing of the oval. It's just about sort of letting your hand flow. So you're not doing any hard, sharp movements. That's why coming in later and adding the pen or the marker to it gives you a more stronger feature, so where these other lines of symmetry sort of fade out once you have your base. So for the hair, again, like I said, I like big hair. I have big hair, so I like big hair. And I usually just sort of like play with the lines here. You can always go back and add more detail, but it should be very faint and whimsical and wispy, because you can always go back and add those lines later. So that's basically just a simple way to begin to practice doing your face shapes for fashion illustration. Again, this is drawn to a larger scale. You obviously are going to be doing much smaller shapes and facial features when you're going to be adding it to your croquis. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Videos covering dressmaking, fashion, lectures, and more. Enroll in Lady Cloth U on Teachable for dressmaking and fashion design courses. See you again soon.